In today's video, I'm going to talk you through a floral design in a simple jug that you might have at home. So welcome back to today's video. Now this is going to be one of the series where I use the same container to make 3 different arrangements. And I'm going to start with something that's a little bit more formally arranged, following a pattern. And it really does relate to those basic designs that I would have taught you in the Back to Basics series. So we're looking at a bit of a line arrangement with some added extra placements at the bottom. So come along and let's see what we can create. I've already placed some floral foam into my container, and you can see that I've kept it quite low down because I'm not planning on bringing any flowers out to the side. So I only need enough foam to support my upright vertical placements. This one is going to be quite straight and quite linear, and then I'm going to look at creating something in a very different loose posy style, maybe using the same flowers. I might add a few extra in, but I'm aiming to try and do 3 designs with very similar choice of flowers. You could, if you wanted to, use some wire netting on the base. The only problem that you might have with that is that you may not be able to get your flowers to sit in such a regimented position. But the next design I'm going to do in the same container is going to use wire netting, and you'll get to see a whole different array of floral designs. Let's get started today. Now I've got a mixture of some garden flowers, garden greenery, and some commercially available products. These have already been used in the previous design, so some of them are cut down short, but I always think that just shows you how versatile flowers can be, and that maybe you can recycle them from one design to a next and not necessarily throw them away just because they've got short stems. Now I'm thinking that I'm going to go slightly taller on one side and lower and clustered down towards the front. That I think is going to suit the style of the container and not hide that really pretty vase. So to create my upward movement, I've got a garden flower which is called Phlomis. It's a delightful little yellow flower. It's a candelabra structure. So you'll see you've got these groups of flowers raising up the stem. And it's quite unusual because the stem itself is square, which we don't often see in many flowers, but that's really going to help give me some height. And I'm looking roughly twice the height of my container. So if you imagine this jug sitting on top of there twice, that's roughly how tall I'm going to go. We'll start by getting the Phlomis nice and tall into the arrangement, and I'm working off center, so that's really going to help me get that asymmetrical style. This one has gone in straight up, really vertical, and if we look at it from the side, it's not leaning backward and it's not leaning forward. If you end up with flowers that are leaning forward, it almost looks like the flowers are going to fall out of the vase. So keep them nice and straight, and we're creating the outline of our floral design, starting by getting the height into position. And then I'm going to place a second one alongside it, a little bit lower and angled slightly out to one side, so we can really clearly see all those amazing yellow little flowers. And I've placed each one in between, so we don't have a design that's too cluttered there. And the 2 little offshoots that I cut off from the side, I'm going to pop in on what will become the shorter side of my arrangement. So we're going to go down and across, almost like an L shape. I did say at the beginning we were going to go quite vertical. We are going to slightly come off onto the left hand side, almost creating an L. But that's my height. Let's get some flowers in on the opposite side, and I'm going to add just a small amount of greenery in at this stage to help decide how wide my bouquet is going to go. This is a garden foliage. You might recognise this as Spirea, or commonly known as bridal crown. It's a really lightweight, soft and airy greenery. In the springtime it will have an amazing small flower on it, but the greenery is really good to use all throughout the year. Just make sure you've conditioned it properly, you haven't picked it out of the garden when it's really hot, and you've given it a chance to rest and recover before putting it in your floral design. And what I'm doing here is giving myself a little bit of side movement. I don't have a great deal of foam above the edge of my container, so I'm limited to the angle that I can get this greenery in at. So I've used it with the arch, the natural arch of the greenery. And if I just hold that up for you, you can see how those stems really nicely arch off to one side. And I'm going to add the same foliage in at the back so that we've got a connection between one side of the arrangement and the other. Keep going with a little bit more of that greenery, making sure that the stem ends are nice and clean when we push them into the foam. And then this taller piece is going to work really well there in the back. And what you're looking to do is just to find some greenery in your garden that's quite soft and quite wispy. If you don't have a garden, go and ask your friends or your neighbours, or purchase some from a florist shop. But what we're not doing with this style is going too heavy with the greenery. It's a lightweight design. The container is quite small and quite dainty, and we really don't want to overfill it with too many heavy materials. I'm going to keep on with a bit more greenery just towards the back. This is going to help give me that depth that you always hear me talk about, and it's going to stop that arrangement looking really flat. And I'm going to leave it as it is at that stage, with a small bit of greenery at the back, some foliage on either side, and then we get a bit of a rhythm from one side of the arrangement to the other. In this gap here, I'm going to add a few smaller pieces, just again so that we have movement from one side to the other. Your eye will pick up the greenery and it will rhythmically follow it through from one side to the other. And I'm just going to add in a little bit more height. This foliage is really lightweight, it's really floaty, and I'm thinking that we need something at the back just for a bit of extra visual weight. And that's better. It now helps to draw your eye all the way up and follow that lovely yellow colour. Now if we look at it from that position, it's really, really flat. There's a bit of dimension at the back, but we don't have any profile here at the front. So that's what I need to work on now, is bringing some greenery and some flowers out towards the front. Otherwise I've got a really squashed flat design. And what I'm going to do for the front is to use some garden eucalyptus. I'm lucky enough to have recently planted one of these beautiful eucalyptuses in the garden. It's about 2 years old, and apparently, not that I'm a tree expert, that once it gets to 2 years, you can quite happily cut it and it will come back and it will mature quite nicely. So I've been watching it in the garden for the last couple of years, and now I'm able to cut from it. So just added a little bit of that towards the front, and I'm going to place another piece at the back. And that again is so that we've got a connection between the greenery at the back and the foliage at the front. It's much better if you can use it in more than one place than adding it to the front and not having anything that links with it and connects it. Now if we look at it from the side, that starts to give us a profile, and it starts to get that triangular shape formed at the front. I'm going to add one smaller little wispy bit of greenery in there because I think there's a gap there. But I'm not going to add any more foliage in because I need the space there in the middle for my flowers. My first flower, I nearly said foliage then, but it's my first flower, is going to be cornflowers. And I did have a mental blockage then. I haven't got many, but these are some locally grown cornflowers. I would like to say they're from my own garden, but they're not. We did a wedding on the weekend and we didn't use up all the cornflowers, and I felt that the colour would go really well with my container, and it's a lovely summery colour with the yellow Phlomis. So I'm going to start with some of that up quite tall. So we're looking at creating the height again, and then I'm going to swoop that colour over onto the shorter side. Or is it the longer side? It's probably the longer side because my shorter side is on the handle of the jug. And you can see now that I've got just the blue on the outside edge. So I need to join it together, almost like you're doing a dot-to-dot puzzle. Work your blue colouring down the front, extending it forward slightly so that you get that profile. Stagger them, 1, 2, 3. You could put more in if you wanted to. And now we've got a little bit of movement down the front. I can take that colour off onto the longer side. And I think we might only need 1 flower there. What I don't want to do is put it in a perfect line with these two because it looks really quite stiff. And then with my final small little blue one, I'm going to nip it in on the shorter side, remembering that this is shorter side and this is slightly longer. And considering possibly cutting off this end bit here, but we leave it there until all my flowers are in. So quite formal pattern, but a very rustic sort of little jug. And next I've got a really pretty flower. You might not have seen this one before. You'll recognise it straight away, I'm sure, as a gerbera. But this is called a piccolino, and it's like a miniature gerbera. It's tiny, tiny. It's only maybe 3 or 4 centimetres across on the top. But to go with the small scale of this design, they are really going to work well. Again, we had them in for some work on the weekend and I didn't use them all, and I think it's nice to show you different flowers that you could maybe get hold of or order from your florist shop. So what I'm doing there is I'm aiming again to repeat that sort of staggered line down through the front. What I'm going to do with this little gerbera who's decided to turn its head upwards is I'm going to bring that one out towards the front, because that will help add to the profile. When positioned towards the front, it's going to help that that orange colour get all the way down so that the colour is coming from the top all the way down from the bottom. And then I'm going to send that orange off to one side. This time it's the longer side. And I need to remember that because my foam is below the level of my jug, my angles of the flowers coming out from the side are going to be a bit more relaxed. I'm not going to be able to get them perfectly straight because I don't have any foam above the container. But that's the position so far, and then a little bit of orange here on the shorter side will help to balance off the colour and give me a fairly even distribution of that orange colour. So far, so good, I think. And I will just slightly remove the greenery off on this side. If I cut it shorter, I can just pop it back in. But I'm thinking that as an asymmetrical design, one that is unbalanced is a little bit longer or a little bit too long on this side here. Now then, I've got 3 quite large roses. These are what we would refer to as garden roses. It's a little bit of an unusual variety in that it has the seed head in the centre. We use these a lot when we're trying to create a rustic and a country style arrangement or a wedding bouquet, and these are all the same colour, although one of them is much, much darker, but still a really gorgeous rose, and it's going to work really nicely in my focal point. So 3 tucked in that middle sort of bottom section, and I think actually I might only need 2. Let's have a little look, because it's only a small design. I'm just thinking, so that's the 2 as it is there, 1, 2, and I am going to use the 3rd one, but I'm going to tuck it down a little lower. What I was originally thinking was maybe it would be too big to fill the gap and it would be a bit visually heavy, but I think if I take it down low, a bit lower than the gerbera, then it's going to work quite well. So that's the jug so far. All I need to do now is to fill in and make sure all that floral foam is covered. And to do that, I'm just going to use the same Spirea foliage. This lasts really well as long as it's been conditioned properly. A couple of short pieces tucked in down quite low. It's going to give me a nice soft wispy look and also help link all of the different textures of the greenery together, and it's going to help link one side of the design through to the other. Now at this stage, I do quite often mention that from where you're watching, you probably can't see the floral foam, but because I'm much closer to the design and I'm looking down on it, I can really see the gaps. And it's important, mechanics, any foam or tape, it's really important that you completely cover it because it does look quite unsightly if it's visible. And of course, the floral foam will dry out much quicker if it's open to the surface area because it'll dehydrate and the water will evaporate off really quickly. So a nice simple one to start with. Don't forget that I am going to reuse these flowers in another arrangement so you can understand how versatile flowers can be. And if you're copying this at home and you don't have any garden flowers, think of the shapes. At the back we've got this straight lined material, so anything like a delphinium, a larkspur. You might have bridal gladiolus at the moment in the supermarket, is going to work really well. Then you need to bring a rounder flower type, which is more like your focal flower, to continue the movement from one side to the other. And then your larger, rounder shapes need to be at the focal area. And that can be anything from a rose to a gerbera, it could be peonies this time of year, or even a lily there at the base. But try and remember softer flowers towards the outside and larger flowers towards the middle. And I hope you've enjoyed that one. So as always, I encourage you to please subscribe to the channel, share with as many people as you can, let them know we're here, let them know all the exciting floral designs that you can come along and learn. If you haven't already done so, then hit the notification bell so that you get told every time I upload a new tutorial. And I look forward to seeing you for the next video. So bye for now.